And this great union that Lee just talked to us about, you know, we grew from some humble beginnings back in the state of Wisconsin to an idea who, in our opinion, its time had come. And that is that public sector workers and the public sector responsibilities were important if we were going to deal with the basic issues of quality of life in our society. So a lot of us believe that made sense, and we ought to build a union whose mission it was to do those things that were important. We also believe that we had the God-given right to participate in those decisions that affected our work life, our working conditions, and we saw that through a process called collective bargaining. And since our birth, we fought for those principles, and as the president said, we will continue to fight for them. We'd like to say sometime that we will fight till hell freezes over, and then we'll just skate across on the ice and swing a little bit more. As Lee so clearly pointed out, these are difficult times for our union and for our people. But what we must, in my opinion, clearly understand as we face the future, who are we fighting with and what are we fighting for? When we took and passed our city, county, state exams, for all the various classifications in our system, we committed to doing something that society said it needed doing to make our life a little bit better and a little bit more meaningful. So whether you were a heavy equipment operator or a truck driver or a corrections officer or an account clerk or food service worker, whatever those hundreds and hundreds of classifications were, we said we want to build a career, we want to make a contribution. These functions, as I said before, were functions that folks said we needed. We really need somebody to say whether or not our food is safe to eat, our water is clean to drink, our air is reasonably pure. So we committed ourselves to public service as public employees, not public servants. There is a difference. And what we do is important. It is important work. There's a great debate brewing today as to whether or not any of the things we do are necessary, are good for the public, and at what cost. I mean, there's some folks who don't think we are worth anything. They don't really need us. As President Saunders said, we must be 100% engaged in this debate about what we do. Over the years, we've won the moral argument about our rights in a lot of places, including right here in the state of Washington. But our enemy is relentless. And like many other struggles of workers, it's hard for us to win a war that stays won. Our enemies come back time after time after time, and we simply can't stamp them out. I kind of think that we got to wipe them out, all their families, their children, get rid of them so that we can have a society that can meet the needs of, is Reverend still here? Our history books are full and crammed with stories of the business leaders and the politicians and what they have contributed to building our society. Yet they appear to be at the 4 stages of Alzheimer's when it comes to what average working people have done to build a decent system. It omits the contributions of everyday workers. It'll tell us about Leland Stanford, you know, the thief who built the railroad, got a great university, but a thief. They'll tell us about John Rockefeller, great man, except he turned the police on workers in Ludlow, Colorado. They'll tell us about Carnegie and Morgan and Mellon. They'll tell us everything except how they stole from the American people to build their fortunes. Our books Our books tell us everything about them except how they got the politicians to do exactly what they wanted. Like Donald Trump said the other day, I mean, we get them to do what we want because we give them money. Now, our union, as Lee pointed out, we understand politics, but it is hard to compete with the Koch brothers, when they contribute $900 million in an effort to get their people in office to do what they want done. And that's what Citizens United allows them to do. And there's a fundamental difference between when the Koch brothers want something and when we want something. What they want are favors. What we want are the opportunities to have a better life. We want an education system that prepares us and our children for the world of the future. Fairly simple. We want an economic system that gives us an opportunity for a better life. We want decent and affordable health care to protect us against the uncertainties of life. We want a pension and a retirement system that in the sunset of our lives, we can live out the remainder of our time with some degree of respect and dignity. These are not outrageous questions. But brothers and sisters, we as a part of the 99% continue spending a lifetime chasing these possibilities with varying degrees of success, mostly failure all the way through. What we do is important to each and every one of us, and important to the society we're trying to build and maintain. What we do is important. With the skills we get, we're able to give a measure of aid and comfort to the sick and the injured, to those who cannot care for themselves. They turn to us. We should not allow ever those issues that deal with quality of life matters to be put into the profit system so that living and dying is based on whether or not you can afford it. We should not do that. We risk our safety and our health on a daily basis, overseeing those whose society has determined should not be free among us. We make our city, our county, our state, and our nation, we make it work. Sooner or later, right here in the state of Washington, highways and byways across, snow's gonna fly. Not only here, but in other states in this neck of the woods. Somebody's gonna have to plow. Somebody will have to plow the roads. Now, I guarantee you, it will not be a CEO or one of the 1%ers. It's gonna be somebody who is a heavy equipment operator or a snowplow operator who in the dead of night will have to leave their home to go and do what their job calls upon them to do. Now, I'd be less than honest if I said every one of them is going to be anxious to go out and do that. But I guarantee you not a single one of them will refuse to do what their job calls upon them to do. And so for those politicians who speak of our job with some disdain, they just don't see the value of what we do, we ought to let one of them just ride along with a snowplow operator 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Or maybe just let one of them, operate short staff in one of the prisons of their choice in the middle of the night, just to get a sort of a feel for the function. Since they don't seem to think we do anything useful. A few weeks ago, our nation paused to recognize the event of 9/11, a dreadful event in the history of our nation, but a hallmark of service and sacrifice. Thousands of workers were lost that day, some of our own brothers and sisters here in AFSCME. Many died trying to save others when they could have saved themselves. Those politicians who lack the courage or have an abundance of cowardice, who pledge to never raise a tax or never raised more revenues. They must be made to remember those firefighters, those EMTs, and other public employee first responders who lost their lives in this devastating event. For the politicians who speak of our service in that manner, we just really ought to give them a chance to understand what public services are like. Give them a chance to be away from their families when they would love to be home. Give them an opportunity to wonder whether or not there might be a small increase in next year's budget. Wonder whether or not their insurance is going to go up because of some legislative silliness. This is what we ought to give them a chance to experience. We heard from the president as he detailed the crisis we face. We face a crisis as workers and as citizens. A couple of years ago, the legislative leadership of our country was turned over to a new kind of political philosophy. And while many of us have deep concerns about what took place in this transfer of power, that's the way our democracy works. Sometimes we get good guys, sometimes we get crazy. But that's the way it worked. The US Senate, the House of Representatives, and many states across the nation is now in the hands of a new kind of Republican Party. A new kind, not the party of sensitive leaders that we have worked with in the past, our union, not the party of great leaders like Charles Percy or Everett Dixon or Edward Brooke or Jacob Javits, leaders who believed in workers' rights, and civil rights, and human rights. The nation is now in the hands of a crowd who don't believe in any of those values. They want to shut us down because the sun was late rising, shut down the government, forgetting that there are millions and millions of people who need some of the basic services that government performs. Well, they don't. They don't need them and don't want them. Let's take a moment. Let's take a moment to sort of refresh our collective memory. In the year 2000, roughly 15 years ago, the rich and powerful turned to the Supreme Court, turned to them to stop the vote count in Florida. Stop the count, which had the effect of giving the presidency of this nation and the most powerful office in the free world to George W. Bush. Well, I mean, compared to what's going on today, Bush wasn't a bad dude. My point is, when the Supreme Court did that, we didn't hear anybody sing out, well, the Supreme Court ain't the final word on the Constitution. We did hear that last week, a week or so, when Huckabee was arguing that the Supreme Court should not be considered as the last word with regard to our Constitution. That borders on crazy as far as I'm concerned.
It's not even near the border.
But in that action, it set loose a chain of events across this country. The new administration and their 1% allies began a relentless assault on our unions and on working families, as Lee pointed out. For 8 years, the nation witnessed a government and government policies favorable to the rich and wealthy and opposed to the interests of working families, no matter what the policy was. I don't care what it was, they were against it. We saw good paying jobs outsourced by the hundreds of thousands. Jobs at one point were being lost at 750,000 jobs a month. 750,000 workers and families faced with what I call an uncertain present and a frightening future. Your home mortgages, we remember, were underwater. Home foreclosures at a record level. Home building stalled, millions of workers laid off, fired, public sector workers downsized by hundreds of thousands. And auto industry on the verge of collapse. The banking industry and the international economy going down, heading towards global meltdown. That was a little while back. After 8 years, we decided we wanted to go another direction. And when I say we wanted to go in another direction, folks who had never worked together before, but the crisis said we got to do something. So trade unionists, young people who hadn't voted in their life, may not have wanted to vote then except for being scared to death. Seniors, men, women, African Americans, the LGBT community, Latinos, Asian Americans, we all came together like we got to come together next year. We saved the nation from the 1%ers. We saved them. We saved it from the hedge fund crowd, from the Wall Street slicksters and hucksters. We sent a political message across the nation and the world that we, regular people, are about to figure out what the rich and wealthy are up to. But once again, the rich and wealthy went to where? The Supreme Court, and got what they considered to be a good deal. They got Citizens United. Not a simple ruling, but a ruling designed to guarantee that we'll never have another president elected that they did not own. That's what that is about. And as Lee said, we can't beat something with nothing. We need dollars. During the course of that campaign, we learned something. We learned that the loss of 4 million manufacturing jobs was not an aberration in economic policy, but a direct result of administration planning. They planned to outsource, downsize, right-size, using labor flexibility, all these fancy terms, to get rid of people, and they succeeded. We learned that the plants that closed their doors in Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan, the home foreclosures in Georgia, and Nevada, and California, they had nothing to do with the fact that my uncle decided he wanted to be my aunt. Nothing to do with it. We learned that we didn't lose 3 million jobs because there was no prayer in school. Matter of fact, as long as they teach algebra and geometry, they're going to be prayer in school. We lost them because the rich and the powerful has no loyalty to American workers and no commitment to American values. Their loyalty is to their wealth, and their commitment is to keeping both, no matter what it takes. Brothers and sisters, our adversaries, the 1%ers, the Citizens United crowd, are doing what they always do. And we can see it building up now. They turn to lies, conspiracies, you name it. They have the ink and the media to accomplish what they need, and that is to turn us against each other. Blacks against whites, whites against black, North against South, South against North, East against West, straights against gays, everybody against immigrants. They can do that. And while they laugh their way to the bank, we squabble with each other about nothing. Nothing. And we, years ago, and we're going to stay at it, hopefully, have decided that this union will stay focused on the issues that affect its members and the quality of life of those we serve. We will not get caught up in that foolishness about you got one green eye and one blue eye. So? But with all of their deceit and all of their deception, they have once again taken over our nation, using our pent-up frustrations to help them do it. And let me just say this, the rich and the wealthy have not given up on slavery. let's be clear. They are in the process of redefining slavery. When back in the day, slavery was about no wages. Today it's about low wages. They're making it possible for all of us to participate in the process. If you pay folks $7.25 an hour, that is slavery. That is slavery. No one can support themselves and raise a family in this day and age on $7.25 an hour. And let us not be happy because we get $10.10 an hour. Be pleased we got 15, but we cannot live off of $15 an hour. We can live better, but we cannot live off of that. And we've got to continue that fight. Why are they trying to get rid of the unions? Because they know that we have the power to participate in those decisions that affect our wages and our hours and our conditions of employment. And therefore, the power is taken from them to dictate our future. They know that if they maintain the power, they have the ability to decide what they will pay workers. And you and I both know they will never pay workers what they are worth. They will pay their circumstances dictate they must settle for. In New Hampshire a few weeks ago, a whole bunch of them went up there to sort of stake their claim, 18 and 19. I mean, from the wackos to the whacked out. They talked about how great this country was before Obama, right? They would like us to think that what we as workers are up against now is something new. It's a new kind of fight. The pastor said it best. What we're experiencing now is not a new fight. It is the same old fight with the same old enemy. And it's the same enemy who fought Roosevelt when he talked about the National Labor Relations Act to give workers a fair shot. Same crowd. Same enemy that fought against Social Security. Same crowd. And when I said what I said a while ago, I said it because they appear to reproduce themselves. And so we've got to figure out some way to stamp out the seed, you know what I mean? We've got to figure out how to keep them from reproducing. It's the same crowd who fought against the Child Labor Act and continue to fight against it. The same one who fought against unemployment compensation. This is the same crowd. They fought against the 8-hour day, the 40-hour week, minimum wage, living wage. Everything that is out there to benefit average people, they are against. Now, it makes me think that the greatest threat to them are strong unions and equitable lives for people who live in this nation. Because otherwise, there's no reason for them to be against everything. And as we move towards 2016, let us not forget where we were as a nation 6 years ago. And as tough as times are now, they appear to be getting better. Not for everybody. We got a lot of work to do, but they're better than they were 6 or 7 years ago. I can understand for 70 years we talked about national health care. And for 70 years we tried to get it. Now we don't have a perfect one now, but we got something better than what we had. And for them to want to do away with it, what's the plan for taking care of those who at least feel some benefit as a result of it? Improve what we got. Improve on the plan that's in place now so that average American people who are really on the margins can at least not be so uncertain about their health or the health of their family and live with some degree of decency. Not one of them who went up there, bear with me a minute. had the insight to mention the fact that the banking system that this nation saved from going belly up, who had just sort of stolen from homeowners and home buyers, and now are flourishing with money like you would not believe, yet not a single one of them will spend $1 to help us build the highways and the bridges and the water systems that we need, and help some of those who are still unemployed go to work. Not a single bank says that. Not a single one of them thought about the millions of people who are now working 1, 2, sometimes 3 jobs just to keep their head above water. And this crowd wants to lead them. They want us to give them back what we took from them 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Put it back in their hands.
Hell no.
Well, I'd like to put that into a form of a motion. No, we're smarter than that. We're smarter than that. And I think the plan that the National Union has laid out and that is being put into action is a plan to help us bring this nation back to some degree of stability and help those people who we serve live their lives out with some degree of decency. I want to say thank you. Thank you to Greg and to Sue and the council for allowing some of us old timers to come back around and sort of holler at you for a little bit. Council 28, Washington State, and the affiliates of this great union will be ready for whoever the crazies choose to run next time.